Why everything changes after your first $100,000. Have you ever noticed something strange about money? For years, it feels like you're running uphill. You work, you save, you try to be responsible, and yet your bank account barely seems to move. You save your first $1,000, it disappears. You save $5,000, still doesn't feel like much. Even $10,000 can feel surprisingly small when you're thinking about the future. Then something unexpected happens. Ask almost any self-made millionaire about their journey, and many of them will tell you the same thing. The hardest part wasn't making their first million, it was making their first $100,000. That number shows up again and again, not because it's magical, not because the universe suddenly rewards you, but because after your first $100,000, the rules of the game begin to change. Money starts behaving differently. Your decisions start changing, and perhaps most importantly, you stop relying only on your work to build wealth. So why is $100,000 such an important milestone, and why does everything seem to change after you reach it? Let's talk about it. Imagine two people, Jake and Sarah. Both are 25 years old, both earning decent incomes, both want financial freedom. Jake believes wealth comes from making more money. Sarah believes wealth comes from keeping and growing money. At first, their lives look almost identical. They both get paychecks, they both pay bills, they both go out with friends, they both dream about becoming financially successful someday. But over the next few years, something interesting happens. Jake focuses entirely on increasing his income. Every time he earns more, he spends more. A nicer apartment, a newer car, more expensive vacations. Sarah does something different. She still enjoys life, but every month she saves and invests a portion of what she earns. Not because she's obsessed with money, but because she understands one simple truth. Every dollar she saves today becomes a worker that can earn money tomorrow. And that's where most people misunderstand wealth. We think wealth is about income, but wealth is actually about ownership. A person earning $50,000 who owns assets can become richer than someone earning $150,000 who spends everything, because income is what you make, wealth is what you keep. And for most people, the first $100,000 is where this difference becomes visible. Before $100,000, progress feels painfully slow. Let's say you have $5,000 invested. Even if your investments grow by 10% in a year, that's only $500. It's nice, but it doesn't feel life-changing. At $10,000 invested, a 10% return becomes $1,000. Still helpful, but not exciting. At $20,000, now it's $2,000. Better, but probably not enough to dramatically impact your life. This is why so many people quit. They save for years, they invest consistently, they do everything right, and yet the results feel tiny. The problem isn't that investing doesn't work. The problem is that they're still in the hardest phase, the pushing phase. Imagine trying to spin a giant flywheel. At first, it barely moves. You push, nothing happens. You push again, still nothing. The effort feels disconnected from the results. But eventually, the wheel starts turning, and once it gains momentum, every push becomes more effective. Wealth works the same way. The first $100,000 is often the hardest because you're building momentum from almost nothing. You're fighting against expenses, you're fighting against temptation, you're fighting against impatience, and you're fighting against a brain that wants rewards right now. Human psychology is not naturally designed for wealth building. Our ancestors survived by focusing on immediate rewards. Eat now, use resources now, solve today's problems. Saving money for a future 20 years away doesn't feel emotionally satisfying. Buying something today does. That's why so many people struggle with long-term investing, not because they're bad with money, but because they're human. The challenge isn't mathematics, the challenge is behavior. Most people know they should save, most people know they should invest. The problem is doing it consistently when the rewards seem invisible. And that's exactly why reaching $100,000 changes so much, because for the first time, your money starts contributing meaningful growth. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine two investors. One has $10,000 invested, the other has $100,000 invested. Both earn the same 10% annual return. The first investor earns about $1,000, the second investor earns about $10,000. Notice something important. Neither person worked extra hours. Neither person got a promotion. Neither person started another side hustle. The difference came entirely from ownership. Their money started working. And that's the moment many people experience a psychological shift. For years, they've been carrying the entire burden themselves. Every dollar required effort. Every dollar required time. Every dollar came from work. Then suddenly they see investment growth producing results that once required weeks or months of labor. It's the first glimpse of financial leverage. And once you see it, you never think about money the same way again. But something even more important happens. Your identity changes. This part rarely gets discussed. Before building wealth, many people see themselves as consumers. They think about what they can buy, what they can afford, what they want next. After building meaningful assets, they gradually begin thinking like owners. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" they start asking, "What will this cost me in future wealth?" That question changes everything. Imagine spending $1,000. Most people see a $1,000 purchase. An investor often sees something different. They see what that $1,000 could become. If invested and left alone for decades, it might grow several times over. Suddenly, every purchase has an invisible future cost attached to it. Not because wealthy people never spend money, but because they understand opportunity cost. Every dollar has multiple possible futures, and learning to see those futures is one of the biggest mindset shifts that occurs around the $100,000 mark. Another reason everything changes is confidence. When you're starting from zero, every setback feels huge. A surprise bill, a medical expense, a job loss, a market decline. Everything feels threatening. But once you've built substantial savings and investments, you gain something more valuable than money itself. Options. You can handle emergencies. You can survive uncertainty. You can make decisions from a position of strength rather than fear. Money doesn't solve every problem, but it gives you choices, and choices create freedom. That's why financial freedom isn't really about luxury cars or giant mansions. It's about control. Control over your time. Control over your decisions. Control over your future. The first $100,000 often represents the moment people begin feeling that control. Not complete freedom, but the first real taste of it. Now here's the surprising part. The habits that get you to $100,000 are often the same habits that help you reach much larger milestones. Consistency, patience, delayed gratification, long-term thinking. Nothing dramatic, nothing flashy. In fact, that's one of the biggest misconceptions about wealth. People assume wealthy individuals discovered some secret, some hidden shortcut, some magical investment. But for many people, wealth is simply the result of ordinary decisions repeated for an extraordinary length of time. The problem is that this answer isn't exciting. People want dramatic stories. They want overnight success. But wealth usually grows quietly, month after month, year after year, almost unnoticed, until one day the numbers become impossible to ignore. And that's exactly what happens around the $100,000 milestone. The invisible becomes visible. The momentum becomes noticeable. The effort begins producing meaningful results. And suddenly, the future starts looking very different. So if you're still working toward your first $100,000, here's what you need to remember. The slow progress doesn't mean you're failing. The small gains don't mean the strategy isn't working. You're simply in the hardest part of the journey, the phase where discipline matters more than results, the phase where you're building the flywheel. Most people quit before reaching momentum, not because the system failed, but because they couldn't see what was happening beneath the surface. Keep saving, keep investing, keep thinking long-term, because every dollar you invest today is another worker joining your team. And eventually, you'll reach the point where those workers start producing meaningful results on their own. That's when everything changes. Not because $100,000 is a magical number, but because it represents a shift from relying entirely on yourself to having your money work alongside you. And that may be the most important lesson about wealth. The goal isn't to work harder forever. The goal is to build something that works for you. because true wealth isn't measured by how much money you earn. It's measured by how much freedom your money creates. And for many people, that journey truly begins with the first $100,000.